The year is 1974. A defender named Mwepu Ilunga runs out of a defensive wall and kicks the ball away before a Brazilian player can take a free kick. The world laughs. They call it the ultimate sign of African footballing naivety. That team was Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. They left that tournament having conceded 14 goals and scoring 0. For 52 years, that humiliation was the blueprint for how the world viewed the minnows of football. They were the punchlines. They were the filler. They were the teams invited to the party just to make the hosts look better. But look at the scoreboard now. The 2026 World Cup was designed in a boardroom in Zurich with one specific goal: growth. FIFA expanded the field to 48 teams. It was a move criticized by purists as a cash grab, a way to dilute the quality of the greatest show on earth just to squeeze more broadcasting revenue out of more territories. The logic was simple. More teams equals more matches. More matches equals more money. But there was a silent, arrogant assumption buried in the fine print of that 48-team expansion. The assumption was that the giants, the Argentinas, the Englands, the Frances, would stroll through an expanded group stage using these new, smaller nations as warm-up acts. The minnows were supposed to be the speed bumps. They were the content that would eventually be cleared away to make room for the billion-dollar quarterfinals. FIFA wanted a bigger bank account. They didn't realize they were building a graveyard for their own favorites. The giants are still here, technically. They are roaring, they are scoring, and they are doing exactly what the sponsors paid for. But they are no longer the story. The narrative has been hijacked. The 2026 World Cup has become FIFA's worst nightmare because the filler nations refused to follow the script. They didn't come to be extras in a movie about Lionel Messi. They came to burn the set down. To understand how we got here, we have to look at the math of greed. FIFA's projected revenue for this cycle is north of $11 billion. To hit that number, you need the Tier 1 markets, the UK, Brazil, Germany, the US, to stay in the tournament as long as possible. When a small nation knocks out a powerhouse, the TV ratings in that powerhouse nation plummet. It is a financial disaster disguised as a sporting miracle. And right now, the miracles are happening at a rate FIFA's accountants can't keep up with. The first crack in the facade wasn't even on the pitch, it was at the border. Consider the case of Lumumba Vea. If you follow Congolese football, you know the face. He is the static fan. He is an icon who stands perfectly, eerily still in the stands while the world around him collapses in chaos. He is the heartbeat of the Leopards' support. But when the DRC took the field for the biggest match in their modern history, the seat where Lumumba should have been was empty. Why? Because his visa to enter the United States was denied. This is the specific sadness of the 2026 tournament. FIFA sold a dream of a united World Cup across North America, but the reality was a bureaucratic fortress. Fans from the global South, the very people whose teams were invited to expand the tournament, found themselves locked out by a visa system that didn't care about football. It wasn't just Lumumba. Thousands of supporters and even some team officials were left watching from thousands of miles away because the host nations and FIFA couldn't or wouldn't synchronize their gates. The message was clear. We want your teams for the TV rights, but we don't necessarily want your people. But you cannot stifle the spirit of a nation of 100 million people with a paperwork error. The DR Congo arrived in 2026 with the weight of 5 decades of wandering in the wilderness. Their timeline at this tournament is a masterclass in psychological warfare. It began with Portugal, Cristiano Ronaldo's final quest. The script said Portugal should win 4-0. Instead, Congo played with a tactical discipline that bordered on the religious. They held the 1-1 draw. The world called it a fluke. Then came Colombia. a 1-0 loss. The critics nodded. There it is, they said. The dream is over. The natural order is being restored. Congo was teetering. They needed a win against Uzbekistan in the final group game to do something they had never done: reach the knockout rounds. The match started like a horror movie. Uzbekistan scored after 20 seconds. The goal was ruled offside, but the message was sent. 9 minutes later, they scored again. This one counted. The Congolese players looked heavy. Their striker, Yoane Wissa, later admitted the weight of 100 million people felt like it was crushing their lungs. A Congo equalizer was snatched away by a VAR handball call. It felt like 1974 all over again. The ghosts of the past were laughing. Then, the shift. Congo won a penalty. Wissa stepped up. He didn't just kick a ball. He kicked 50 years of frustration. Goal. 1-1. As the clock ticked into the final minutes of regulation, the filler team found another gear. Wissa struck again. A pinpoint finish. 3-1. The explosion wasn't just in the stadium, it was a seismic event in Kinshasa. The Leopards hadn't just won a game, they had invalidated the idea that they didn't belong. "We came from far," Wissa said after the whistle, his voice trembling. "From nothing to be here. Now we write our story with a black pen." This wasn't a series of isolated mistakes. It was exactly how the system was designed to work. FIFA opened the door for more teams, thinking they were inviting guests who would leave early. Instead, the guests have taken over the house. And Congo isn't the only one holding the matches. Look at the timeline of the African continent in this tournament. It is statistically staggering. Out of 10 African nations that qualified for this expanded field, 9 reached the knockout rounds. 9 out of 10. Tunisia was the only one to fall. The rest, Morocco, Senegal, Ghana, Egypt, Côte d'Ivoire, South Africa, Cape Verde, Algeria, and the DRC, marched on. They didn't just participate, they dominated. South Africa knocked the wind out of South Korea in a winner-takes-all shootout. Ghana held England to a stalemate that left the British press in a state of existential panic. Ecuador, a team often overlooked in the shadow of Brazil and Argentina, stunned Germany. The group stage of blowouts that the critics predicted never arrived. Instead, we got the group stage of consequences. The most surreal story of the timeline belongs to Cape Verde. This is an island nation of 500,000 people. To put that in perspective, you could fit their entire population into the World Cup stadiums 5 times over. They are the smallest nation by population to ever reach the knockout rounds. They did it by drawing with Spain and drawing with Uruguay. They didn't even need a win to prove they were better than the sum of their parts. They reached the last 32 on grit and a refusal to be intimidated by the logos on the opposing shirts. FIFA's nightmare is now a reality. Cape Verde is scheduled to play Messi's Argentina. Think about that from a commercial perspective. For FIFA, an Argentina versus Germany final is worth billions. An Argentina versus Cape Verde round of 16 match is a terrifying risk. If Cape Verde wins, one of the most marketable athletes in human history goes home. The blue-chip sponsors lose their billboard. The TV ratings in Buenos Aires and Miami vanish. This is the dark horse effect. Every time a minnow wins, a revenue stream dies. But the shocks didn't stop in Africa or the Atlantic. They hit home. Canada's timeline at the World Cup was, for decades, a map of a desert. Before 2026, Canada had never scored a goal at a World Cup. Not one. They were a hockey nation trying to play a summer game in a country where the ground is frozen 6 months a year. In 1986, they went 3 games and out. In 2022, they showed promise, but still left with 0 points. Then came 2026. On home soil, the timeline shifted forever. In their opening match, they finally broke the curse. 1 goal. The relief was visible. But it was their second game that sent shockwaves through the CONCACAF region. They didn't just win, they dismantled their opponent 6-0. It was a demolition. A team that couldn't buy a goal for 40 years was suddenly scoring at will. They advanced to the knockouts for the first time in history, shattering 3 national records in 7 days. Meanwhile, their co-hosts in Mexico were quietly putting together a perfect run. 3 games, 3 wins, 9 points. The North American contingent wasn't just hosting the party, they were winning the fights in the kitchen. The structure of this tournament was supposed to protect the elite. The safety net of the 40-18 format was designed so that even if a giant slipped up once, they had enough games to recover. But the underdogs didn't give them room to breathe. They turned the group stage into a sprint. By the time the traditional powers realized they were in a dogfight, the minnows already had their teeth in their throats. We are now entering the knockout phase, and the bracket looks like a minefield. DR Congo faces England. Cape Verde faces Argentina. These are not just football matches, they are potential institutional disasters for FIFA. If England loses to a team that was a punchline in 1974, the fallout will be historic. The pressure on the Giants is no longer just about winning a trophy. It's about preventing an embarrassing exit that would devalue the entire elite brand. But why is this happening now? Why 2026? The answer lies in the globalization of coaching and the diaspora effect. The gap in tactical knowledge has closed. A coach in Kinshasa has the same access to elite data and video analysis as a coach in London. The Congolese players aren't playing in obscure leagues. They are in League One, the Championship, and the Bundesliga. They aren't intimidated by big names because they play against them every Saturday. FIFA expanded the tournament to make more money from the world, but they forgot that the world has been getting better at football while they were busy counting the cash. The dark horses are no longer just happy to be there. They are angry. They are angry about the visa denials. They are angry about the filler labels. They are angry about the 52 years of being told they are naive. When Yohan Wissa talked about the black pen, he wasn't just talking about a metaphor for history. He was talking about visibility. He was talking about a nation that has been exploited for its minerals and its resources, finally taking something back on the world's most visible stage. FIFA wanted a tournament for the giants. They wanted a predictable march toward a blockbuster final. What they got instead is a beautiful, chaotic, and righteous uprising. They got a tournament where a fan who stands perfectly still represents the immovable spirit of a continent. They got a tournament where an island of 500,000 people can make the most powerful football federation on earth tremble. The suits in Zurich are looking at the knockout bracket and seeing risk. The rest of us are looking at it and seeing the truth. This is what the World Cup was always supposed to be. It shouldn't be a closed shop for the wealthy and the established. It should be a place where the ghosts of 1974 can finally be laid to rest. It should be a place where a 6-0 win for Canada feels like a moon landing. The Giants are still roaring, but for the first time in a long time, they sound a little bit desperate. They are looking over their shoulders. They see the leopards. They see the blue sharks. They see a wave of nations that have nothing to lose and an entire world to gain. FIFA's nightmare is our greatest joy. The minnows didn't just fill out the bracket, they broke it. And as the knockout rounds begin, the only certainty is that the old rules no longer apply. The black pen is in Visa's hand, and he is just getting started on the first chapter. Who do you choose to believe in? The billion-dollar favorites, or the teams that had to fight just to get a visa? The lions are waiting, but the leopards have already proven they don't fear the jungle. The 2026 World Cup is no longer a corporate expansion project. It is a revolution in real time. The giants are no longer safe.